Hi, Nicholas here. Welcome to my YouTube channel at Nicholas Bugash. Marlin released new lever action rifles in December 2021, but the classic 444 Marlin chambering was not among them. After 3.5 years of waiting, I recently wrote Marlin again asking when the 444s would be released. They replied, "We are careful not to disclose any new product plans in advance. It occasionally takes longer than expected to get a new product across the finish line, and our plans and priorities change over time, so we would be reluctant to talk about product plans." Other manufacturers have gotten their acts in gear, and today we're going to compare Rossi's R95 and chambered in 444 Marlin to a classic Marlin 444 SS. We will compare the construction and the features of the Rossi R95 and the classic Marlin 444 SS. Then we'll take the rifles to the range and compare their performance using 3 different factory and 1 hand-loaded big game loads. We'll compare 100-yard accuracy, chronograph velocity, we'll calculate energy, and we'll film the shots going off for each load so you can see the recoil they produce. You can see the similarity of these 2 rifles. The Rossi copies the Marlin design, but also has some changes we'll examine. The Marlin has a nicely figured black walnut stock with its pistol grip trimmed with a white line spacer and a black grip cap. Its stock's not checkered, and I replaced the original hard rubber butt plate and white line spacer with a good thin aftermarket recoil pad. The Rossi has a straight grain South American hardwood stock, and its pistol grip is finished without a grip cap, and its buttstock is fitted with a thick recoil pad. The Rossi's buttstock wood is slightly higher than the metal and is sanded down to meet it, but without gaps. Both rifles use a wide semi-beaver tail forend to provide more gripping surface to help control heavy recoiling loads. The R95 has stippling on its forend and pistol grip intended to aid in holding the rifle during recoil. The Rossi's length of pull, the distance from the trigger to the butt plate, is 3/8 of an inch longer as a result of its thicker recoil pad. I think the Marlin's wood gives a higher grade appearance, while the Rossi has a more function-first look. Marlin's actions were made of 6 forged steel parts. Rossi didn't reply to my message asking if its parts were forged. Marlin has a satin polished finish on his blued barrel and receiver with matte surfaces at the top and bottom of the receiver, while Rossi uses a matte finish bluing on both barrel and receiver, which I like because it's less likely to give off game spooking reflections. The side loading gate on the Marlin's easier to use than in the Rossi's, and the Marlin would accept all 7 factory loads and my hand loads. My Rossi would not accept the Buffalo Bore 335 grain lead or the Hornady 265 grain Superformance loads. The Rossi seems to be a little picky about cartridge overall length and bullet profile to allow that slight turn from the loading gate into the magazine tube. I noticed the Rossi's loading port's curved at its leading edge, unlike the Marlin's, and this little bit of extra metal here may be what complicates loading the Rossi. The lever works smoothly on both rifles. The Rossi lever is about 1/8 of an inch wider in the opening, which helps with gloved hands. I would like to have had the larger loop that Rossi uses on some other models. Both rifles include a cross bolt safety as well as a half-cock notch on their hammer. The Rossi allows the action to be cycled for unloading with the safety engaged. The Marlin design has a one-piece extractor made of spring steel. It's a simple design and used for over a century. Rossi's changed the extractor to a thicker machine piece that is pinned in place and tensioned by a captive recoil spring. The Rossi ejector at first glance is identical to the Marlin's, but they've changed it slightly and the metal is thicker. Now once in 33 years, when unloading my 444 SS in very cold weather, I tilted the rifle to its side to unload, and the ejector fell out of its hole and into the action, totally jamming it. I think the cold weather caused the steel to shrink enough to allow the ejector to drop out, but I now keep the top of the action facing the sky when unloading. The Marlin uses a two-piece firing pin that prevents its hammer from moving the rear piece to the forward piece unless the lever is completely closed. Rossi has changed its design to a one-piece firing pin. I didn't feel a difference in the rifle's lock time at the firing range. The Marlin trigger moves smoothly to its break point at an average of 6.7 pounds, but at the range I noticed the slightest bump before the Rossi broke at 6.2 pounds on my gauge. Both rifles have similar iron sights, and Marlin's is protected by a removable hood. The Marlin's receiver is drilled and tapped to mount a rear aperture sight. Both rifles are drilled and tapped for scope mounts. Marlin shipped the 444 SS with a scope base and an offset hammer spur to make it easier to thumb back the hammer when a scope is mounted over it. Rossi uses the same Marlin base but doesn't include it or an offset hammer spur, and these two items sell for about $20. I find variable scopes in the low magnification range in low mounts to be an optimum sighting setup for these short to medium big game rifles. The light gathering qualities of the scopes makes it easier to aim in the low light. The very wide field of view at low power allows for quick target acquisition, and the smaller front diameter allows for the lowest mounting to provide a good cheek weld when quickly mounting the rifle. The 444 SS barrel is listed at 22 inch and the R95 is 20 inch, 2 inches shorter, but the difference between them measures 1 3/4 inches. The R95's magazine tube extends nearly to the muzzle and is 3 3/4 inches longer, which should allow one more cartridge. Both rifles use microgroove rifling with 12 grooves and a 1 38 inch twist. There have been many statements over the years that microgroove rifling cannot shoot heavy bullets accurately and cannot shoot cast lead bullets accurately. We'll test that so that you can see the results. Barrel making forms grooves in the bore, leaving raised surfaces called lands. The bore diameter is inside the lands. The groove diameter is from the bottom of one groove to the opposite groove. The bullet should seal tightly against the bottom of the grooves to engrave the rifling, seal the gases, and impart the rifling spin that provides accuracy. Marlin introduced microgroove rifling in the mid-1950s as an improvement to their older Ballard rifling. Their centerfire microgroove rifling features 12 relatively shallow grooves as opposed to the 4 to 6 deeper grooves found in other rifling designs. They found that microgroove barrels provided faster, more even heat dissipation, a better gas seal, far less barrel erosion, and less deep scarring of the bullet. The better gas seal and reduced bullet distortion aided both velocity and accuracy, and the microgroove barrels could also be cut much faster, allowing faster production at lower costs. Many 444 shooters report that poor accuracy with heavy and or cast lead bullets is not caused by microgroove rifling, but that the bullets used were too small to fit and fully seal the bore. They state the best accuracy in Marlin microgroove barrels is found with jacketed bullets that are 430 diameter and cast bullets size 1 to 2 thousandths over groove diameter to 431 to 432. Slugging a bore is the procedure of pushing soft lead like a muzzleloader ball through the barrel and then measuring its diameter with a micrometer, and that'll be the groove diameter. My 444 SS has a groove diameter of 430, while my R95 is 429. We'll return to those numbers when we see the range shooting results. My goals at the range were to see how the loads cycle through the action, how the accuracy of the two rifles compares, to measure the load velocities from each rifle, and to get a sense of the accuracy potential of the rifle and load combinations. I fired 3-shot groups as representative of hunting conditions. I wanted to see if the loads have the potential to meet my rifle's known ability to shoot 1 to 1.5 inch groups, not to define the load's absolute accuracy. Some targets were damaged in transit, so I don't have pictures of all the groups. I presented estimated kinetic energy values out to 200 yards and used red font on the results tables to indicate the range at which the load delivers about 1,500 foot-pounds on target, setting that as a goal for big game, and green font for 1,000 foot-pounds on target for medium game as discussed in my Getting the Most Out of Your 444 Marlin video. I fired one of my Hornady 300 grain XTP hand loads first to establish a baseline for my shooting session. This bullet's proven very accurate for me on my 444 SS, and I usually shoot groups around 1 inch using it. These targets have a 1 inch grid, and this one gives you a sense of the 3-shot groups this load can produce. Today, my average group with this load tended to be on the large side. So when looking at the following group averages, you can expect that better groups are possible with these loads. This load's slightly below maximum for this bullet and delivers big game energy as shown by the red font out to about 150 yards. It delivers medium game energy beyond 200 yards. You can see user reports of this bullet on medium and big game in my Getting the Most Out of Your 444 Marlin video. The recoil is 16% less than Buffalo Bore's full power 300 grain jacketed soft point load and 22% less than their 335 grain lead flat nose gas jack load. My R95 group average was more typical of this load and showed the rifle capable of accuracy comparable to the 444 SS. The large muzzle flash not seen with the 444 SS results from the R95 shorter barrel. Significant gas pressure is being released to the atmosphere instead of pushing the bullet out of the barrel. Some will think it looks cool, but it causes a loss of performance, as further discussed in my Getting the Most Out of Your 444 Marlin video. The muzzle velocity was 71 feet per second lower with the same load as the 444 SS because of the R95 shorter barrel. That resulted in a loss of about 25 yards of range at which the big game minimum kinetic energy goal is achieved compared to the 444 SS. The medium game kinetic energy goal is still attained beyond 200 yards. The difference in felt recoil from the slightly lower velocity wasn't noticeable. It seemed to make sense to begin the factory load shooting using Remington's 240 grain jacketed soft point load because it was the original load developed for the 444 Marlin when it was released in 1964. I don't know why the Marlin team chose this bullet weight that is on the light end of 44 caliber selection, but I suspect it was because high velocity was the fad at that time and the lighter bullet could be driven at higher velocities. The group shown is typical of the accuracy I got with this load, and it seemed that one flyer, when two were nearly touching, enlarged the group averages. The muzzle velocity was highest of the tested loads, but lower than advertised, and the difference was consistent with the loss per inch of barrel compared to a 24-inch factory test barrel. This load in the 444 SS delivers big game kinetic energy goal to just past 100 yards. It delivers medium game energy to 175 yards. Considering these at-target kinetic energy values, along with Remington's bullet test results shown in my Getting the Most Out of Your 444 Marlin video, I believe this load has been designed to produce dramatic knockdown with good chest cavity shots at closer ranges, rather than deeper penetration through bone with less than optimal shots. This was the lightest recoiling load, producing about 19% less kick than the heavy Buffalo Bore 300 grain jacketed soft point load. Remington's 240 grain jacketed soft point load produced similar groups in the R95 as in the 444 SS. The lighter bullet load depends on velocity to achieve its kinetic energy values, but the lower velocity from the R95 shorter barrel did not result in a significant change in the on-target kinetic energy values with this load. And the R95, this load develops the big game kinetic energy goal to 100 yards and the medium game energy to 175 yards. This rifle and cartridge combination produced 17% less recoil than the heavy Buffalo Bore 300 grain jacketed soft point load. Buffalo Bore ammunition is manufactured in Idaho, and they specialize in heavy big bore cartridge loads. This maximum 300 grain jacketed soft point load is similar to a hand load that I used for many years. After the 444 Marlin release in 1964, Elmer Keith, who was a big bore enthusiast credited with developing the 44 Magnum handgun cartridge, wrote, "The 444 Marlin desperately needs a heavier bullet at lower velocities. It should be at least 300 grains and would be better at 350 grains, even though velocity would be cut down to 2,000 feet per second instead of the 2,400 plus as the 240 grain is presently loaded. That's because the longer and heavier bullet had the potential to retain its bone-breaking smash and penetration better than lighter bullets." I think the larger group that I shot with this load in my 444 SS is because I was beginning to tire from recoil by the time I fired it, and not the load itself. The groups I got with the R95 using this load support that conclusion. Buffalo Bore lists this load as having 2150 feet per second muzzle velocity, and I measured almost exactly that. All of their ammunition I've chronographed has performed as advertised. This load in the 444 SS delivers the big game kinetic energy goal to 175 yards. That's 75 yards beyond the 240 grain load, and shows why Keith recommended a 300 grain jacketed bullet in the 444. It retains the medium game energy beyond 200 yards. This load produced the heaviest recoil of the jacketed bullet loads I fired, 19% greater than the 240 grain load. But it's not pleasant to shoot off the bench at all, but the recoil is not noticeable when shooting from field positions when hunting. My R95 1.1 inch group with this load was more typical of the 300 grain bullet performance that I'm used to in my 444 SS. Shooting this 300 grain load in these two rifles, both having microgroove barrels and both having 138 inch twist rate, kills two 444 miss. That microgroove barrels cannot shoot 300 grain bullets accurately, and that a 138 inch twist cannot shoot 300 grain bullets accurately. We'll talk more about getting the best accuracy out of your 444 loads when we discuss the cast bullet loads. The R95 shorter barrel resulted in an average muzzle velocity drop of 71 feet per second with this load. That reduces its big game kinetic energy goal to 150 yards, a decrease of about 25 yards. It also retains the medium gain energy beyond 200 yards. The recoil energy is nearly identical to that when fired at the slightly heavier 444 SS rifle because of the drop in muzzle velocity. I was only able to load 2 of these cartridges through the R95's gate, but many states limit repeating rifles to a 3-round capacity for hunting, so by having one in the chamber, this load could still provide 3 shots. This was the first time I fired cast lead bullets through my Marlin. Many hunters love the performance they get with heavy cast lead bullets in their 444s. I was eager to try them to investigate the complaints about cast lead bullets. My shots were so far apart, at greater than 9 inches, that they didn't really constitute a group. My 444 SS didn't work well with it. That made me curious to see how the R95 would do with this load. Buffalo Bore advertises the load at 2,025 feet per second, and I measured 2,016. Again, essentially as advertised. The longer and heavier 335 grain bullet delivers the big game kinetic energy goal a little farther than the 300 grain jacketed soft point load to just short of 200 yards, whereas jacketed lead bullets are usually designed to provide some expansion at the expense of penetration. Hard cast lead bullets typically have less expansion and greater penetration. This load also retains the medium game energy goal beyond 200 yards. The recoil was stout, 7% greater than Buffalo Bore's heavy 300 grain jacketed soft point load, and about 34% greater than the Remington 240 grain load. Let's see how this load shoots in the R95. I could not get any of these cartridges to pass through the Rossi's loading gate, but I loaded them singly to see if they shot differently from the Marlin. When I fired this load in the R95, I was pleased to see what could be called a groove. I pulled the bullet from one of the cartridges and measured its gas check diameter at 430, the same as the copper jacketed bullet next to it in the picture. The R95's groove diameter is 429, so these bullets are 1/1000th over its groove diameter, and the accuracy improved dramatically. Based on this, cast lead bullet size 431 might shoot even better in this rifle. And cast lead bullets of that size, or 1/1000th larger, could give similar groups in my 444 SS, consistent with experienced cast bullet shooter claims. So we see that microgroove rifling can shoot cast lead bullets accurately, and it can shoot heavy bullets accurately when the cast bullets are size 1 or 2/1000ths over groove diameter. Similarly, experienced shooters generally report that the best Marlin microgroove accuracy with jacketed bullets is obtained with 430 diameter bullets. So whether hand loading or shopping for factory loaded ammunition, you can save yourself from frustration and money by finding the bullet diameter, which manufacturers list, that works best in your rifle and sticking with it. The velocity drop at the shorter R95 barrel was 23 feet per second with this load. This results in a difference in the big game kinetic energy goal of only about 10 yards compared to the 444 SS. This load in the R95 also retains the medium game energy goal beyond 200 yards. This 335 grain load in the slightly lighter R95 produces the greatest recoil energy, about 12% greater than the Buffalo Bore's heavy 300 grain. This table summarizes all the shooting results. Only the 240 grain load did not deliver 1,000 foot-pounds of kinetic energy beyond 200 yards, but it also delivers the least recoil kick. A hunter who's only hunting medium game, shoots at broadside chest area, and is confident their shots will be within 175 yards, might prefer this load for its lighter recoil. A hunter after big game, who might need bone-crushing smash and penetration at 150 to 200 yards, might choose one of the heavier loads. My experience using heavier jacketed 300 grain bullets designed for big game on medium game is that the load still puts the game down in its tracks, or it can travel no more than 30 yards, while it offers bone-busting end-to-end penetration if you only have a poor shot, with full penetration on broadside lung shots accompanied by a clear blood trail, and you get minimum meat damage. I think the R95 has a lot to offer at its price point. Its wood isn't as nice as the Marlin's, and there was a loading difficulty with some factory loads. But for the little bit of shooting I did with 4 different loads, it's clear that it's an accurate rifle, definitely capable of shooting inch to inch and a half groups at 100 yards with loads that it likes, just like my 444 SS. The R95 is well balanced, but I had to give a little edge to the 444 SS for its longer barrel, putting a little more weight out in front, and it gives a little more hang, a little bit more muzzle weighting, which can be an aid if you have an offhand shot, which often happens in deep woods hunting. The R95 shorter barrel gives up some velocity and downrange energy compared to the 444 SS, and that lessens the range for game harvesting smash by about 25 yards. Now, if you're hunting medium-sized game like deer and antelope, the 444 loads from the shorter barrel still retain enough energy, about 1,000 foot-pounds, past 300 yards, and that 25-yard difference may be irrelevant. If you're hunting big game like elk, moose, and bear, the shorter barrel retains 1,500 foot-pounds of smash at 175 yards compared to 200 yards for the longer barrel. Maybe that 25 yards is a consideration for a trophy hunt in some conditions. I'm impressed enough that I'm going to keep this R95 and test it in the field on game. And that's what these rifles are all about. Thanks for watching today. I hope you found this video useful. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel @NicholasBugash to be sure to get more videos like this. I have a video comparing 7 444 Marlin factory loads in the works. and another exploring 444 Marlin hand loads, including their results on game. In the meantime, you might enjoy these videos. The lever action is a classic American rifle, and when chambered in 444 Marlin, it is accurate, powerful enough for the largest North American game, easy to carry, fast to bring into action, and ideally suited for deep woods big game hunting. Please take a moment to call or send an email to Marlin and ask them to make new 444 Marlin rifles.